Hello, my name is Ajay and my topic for the case study is fracture analysis of tuber boiler for physical explosion accident. So first of all, we must understand that the mechanism behind the failure of a product is as much as important as the design of the product. So we must do the critical analysis of the failure so that what we can do is we can generate or we can design the product in a much more efficient and better way. With the current advancement in the technologies now, it is much more relatively easier to analyze the failure, and now also we can get as much data from that failure so that we can prevent the similar accidents from happening time and again. So first of all, what we will do, we will just look into the basic functioning and the construction of a general purpose boiler. So boiler is basically a pressure vessel in which fluid is heated to a certain temperature above the atmospheric pressure. This fluid is mostly water and it is not necessarily raised to a temperature where it starts boiling. It is basically a mixture of liquid and vapor. Now this liquid and vapor is then used for the various applications like cooking, like power generation in the power plants, thermal power plants, nuclear power plants, and it is also used in a heat transfer process. The heat source to the boiler could be coal, charcoal, or natural gas. As you can see in the diagram, we have a drain pipe, a feed water, a firebox where the fuel is burned, a safety valve which will act when the pressure is reached beyond a certain limit, and chimney to let the exhaust gas out. Now we will look into a similar accident of a boiler which happened in previous decade. So as we know that there is a safety valve installed in a boiler which will trigger when the pressure is increased beyond a certain limit. So what happened here is that the people found that the safety valve was detached from the boiler and the explosion was happened due to the increase in pressure which was caused due to the overheating in the boiler. Now further investigation of the accident revealed that there is a wire which controls the feed water. Now that wire was detached due to which the supply of the feed water was interrupted, which caused the contained water to rise to a certain temperature and caused overheating. This overheating caused sudden increase in pressure, and that pressure increase was much faster than what a safety valve could release. And due to this sudden increase in pressure, the explosion happened. Now we will look into the kind of fractures that can happen in a pressure vessel. So these are the diagrams which are taken just as reference. These are concrete pipe taken as a reference of a similar kind of a reference for a pressure vessel. So as we know that in a pressure vessel there are two kinds of stress that can happen. First is a hoop stress and second is a longitudinal stress. So hoop stress is responsible if the hoop stress is increased beyond a limit, that is responsible for the longitudinal fracture. And if the longitudinal stress is increased beyond a limit, that causes the circumferential fracture. So as we can see, the two kinds of fracture, one is along the longitudinal direction and one is along the circumferential direction. So in this accident, what happened is that the main fracture occurred at the circumferential welding of the boiler, and second fracture occurred in the welding joint near the front of the boiler boundary. As the boiler front section was the weakest spot because it had certain notch designs, and we know that the notches are the spots where the stress concentration is maximum. Also, The second fracture occurred near the welding joints revealed that the welding joints were also defected with slag, splatter, undercut, and other defects. These are the real images of that accident happening. In these images, we can clearly see that the first image shows that the fracture happened in the circumferential direction. And second photo also reveal the welding fracture occurred near the boundary of the boiler. With that being said, this is what I have done till now, and in future we will look how scanning electron microscopy reveals much more details about this fracture and much more. So that is all from my side. Thank you.
Myself, Abhishek Maurya, and the topic of my case study is failure analysis of boiler in Neyveli Thermal Power Station. And the motivation and objective behind this case was the failure of boiler which occurred on the 1st of July 2020 at around 9:45 a.m. The contract workers and the permanent staff members were active at the unit when the accident occurred. The boiler resulted in smoke which billowed out of the plant, and this smoke actually injured 17 people, and out of these 17, 16 people were having 40% burns. And the description of accident is actually the use of temporary bypass method to start the boiler after it had tripped. This actually resulted in the failure. The two bypass valves of the trip valves were opened without first closing the two blocks downstream of the LPG control valve, and the non-compliance of the company internal SMS safety requirements also caused the failure. The use of unauthorized temporary bypass method, the removal of sealed wire and the bypass walls. And the history behind the Neyveli Power Thermal Power Station, which is in Kudankulam in Tamil Nadu. This nuclear power station contains two power plants. The one is station 1. The Neyveli Thermal Power Station 1 has the capacity to generate 1600 megawatt. This plant contains the boiler from the Taganrog metallurgical plant, the generators from the Electrosila, and the turbines from the LMG. They were the imported equipments from the Soviet Union. And the second station has the capacity to produce 1470 megawatt, which was actually built in two phases in 1986 and 1988 respectively. These units had the capacity to produce the 210 megawatt each. The generators were brought from the Franco Tossi and the boilers from the Ganj Danubius. The Bhel Limited supplied the four units of same capacity from the March 1991 to the June 1993. Then the two units with 250 megawatt capacity were installed by the Bhel under the stage 2 expansion, and they use the circulating fluidized bed combustion boilers. The eco-friendly circulating fluidized bed combustion is used in the steam generators, which takes 250 megawatt capacity units for the first time in our country. Uh, for the analysis of fracture, I have came across the I have came across the investigations of boiler tubes at Al Kafji plant. In this power plant, two pieces of wall tubes of rolled area of water drum were received for investigation by the Research and Development Center, and and the nature of the failure of these boiler tubes at Al Kafji plant includes the cracks on wall tubes just above expanded and flared area at the water drum. And the description of this boiler is shown in this slide. And the second one is the failure of high temperature superheater tube at Al Jubail power plant, and this was actually in service for 15 years, and this superheater tube had failed at two locations, and the failed portions were from the same pendant. The first portion of the failure was found at the bottom of the first loop near the upstream side of the first bend, and the second portion of the failure was found at the bottom portion of the third loop is upstream of the weld joint. This portion of the tube consisting of outlet and inlet tubes were sent to the R&D for investigation. The pipe shear at the bottom portion, it was observed that the failure of the tube occurred by the rupture at the bottom portion of the third loop upstream side of the weld joint. In my opinion, all personnel who are operating boiler must follow safe operating procedures. Actually, the failure which occurred at Navali thermal power station was actually the negligent by the workers, which was actually was shut down for a very long period of time due to COVID-19, and it was first operated um, after the removal of the COVID-19, and there was no any service of this power plant, and that caused the failure. Authorization must be obtained before introducing change to the boiler system or procedures. There should be procedure to ensure all personnel who are operating a boiler should receive adequate training and supervision. There should also be proper documentation, and that's all. Thank you.
Hello, sir. My name is Anmol Gulati, and the topic of my case study is fracture mechanics analysis of a pressure vessel with a semi elliptical surface crack. The term fracture mechanics refers to an important subdiscipline of solid mechanics that assumes the presence of a crack and quantifies relationship between the crack length, the material's inherent resistance to crack growth, and the stress at which crack propagates rapidly enough to cause structural failure. In this study, I have taken the problem of pressure vessel with semi-elliptical surface crack. A pressure vessel is a closed container designed to hold gases or liquids at a pressure substantially different from the ambient pressure. Fracture issues are related with structure bodies which contain cracks or defects, and the causes of crack generation are various, such as manufacture or service process, welding, fatigue. Any of those can cause and generate cracks. And because of the constraints of manufacturing and welding processes, it is widely believed that the cracks in pressure vessels are unavoidable. Engineers commonly cope with this problem by using fracture mechanics principles in the construction of pressure vessel along with non-destructive examination. The standard procedure to evaluate the criticality of a surface crack in pressure vessel is by the use of well-known stress intensity factor formula for semi-elliptical cracks. Stress intensity factors are a measure of the change in stress within the vicinity of a crack tip. Therefore, it is important to know the crack direction and when crack stops propagating. The stress intensity factor is compared with critical stress intensity factor to determine whether or not the crack will propagate. Thus, the main objective of this study is to find stress intensity factor in a pressure vessel with semi-elliptic surface crack. The establishment of fracture mechanics is closely related to some well-known disasters in recent history, one of which is 1984 Romeoville petroleum refinery disaster. The refinery disaster was one of the deadliest in US history. In this incident, the vessel had been put into the service in 1970 and had undergone several repairs and modifications before the July 1984 incident. This vessel was fractured along a path that was weakened by extensive cracking adjacent to a repair weld joining a replacement section to the original vessel. These pre-existing cracks initiated in the areas of hard microstructure known to be susceptible to hydrogen stress cracking. The cracks grew through the vessel wall as a result of hydrogen pressure cracking. When the depth of the largest of these pre-existing cracks exceeded 90 to 95% of the wall thickness, the remaining thin ligament of steel in the cracked section ruptured, and leakage occurred. This crack caused a complete fracture of the vessel circumference at the operating stress level of only 35 megapascal, which is roughly 10% of the rated strength of the steel. Now, as we have seen in the previous slide, that even a minute crack can cause a disaster. The crack can influence the whole structure strength, and to some extent it can grow and extend to a certain length, causing the whole structure body to damage under certain stress level. Thus, fracture mechanics analysis is needed for such study. The problem of semi-elliptic surface cracks in pressurized cylinders has been studied by several authors, and some of are shown in this slide. The term fracture mechanics was coined to describe the study of mechanics of cracked bodies as well as mechanical properties. As indicated by its name, fracture mechanics deals with fracture phenomena and events. Presence of crack in the wall of pressure vessel can severely reduce the strength of the structure and can cause sudden failure. The strength of the pressure vessel is related to geometry, crack length, material yield strength, and fracture toughness. I will work on some of applications of fracture mechanics concept to predict the strength of a pressure vessel. A major achievement in the theoretical foundation of linear elastic fracture mechanics, that is LEFM, was the introduction of stress intensity factor as a parameter for the intensity of stresses close to the crack tip and related to the energy release rate. So my future work will be to analyze the cracked pressure vessel for various crack dimensions and for various materials for calculation of stress intensity factor. Thank you.
Good evening, sir. My name is Anurag Lakhara. My case study topic is fracture of crane wire rope. Wire rope is an essential and critical component in the cranes. It provides the flexibility to lift a weight, which can be any machinery, structural equipment, and industrial equipment. Due to its lifting operation, it is mainly subjected to tensile loading condition. So there is a risk of fracture of wire rope which can result in accident. Our main motivation is to study various reasons behind failure and prevent them by choosing suitable material, diameter and factor of safety. This figure shows large amount of weight lifted by cranes. In the wire rope, the wires is a basic element. When individual wire starts breaking, we can say wire rope is failed. We can we can lift a large amount of weight using large diameter rope, but it is inoperable and non-reliable in the practical condition. But wire rope can be easily wounded around a drum and also easy to operate. There are a large number of accidents happen due to wire rope failure. A study is done by Ray Edison on the lifting accident which documents various reasons behind the wire rope failure. These are the different types of wear and tear on the wire rope. There are strand protrusion, flattened portion, waviness, and the local reduction of the wire rope. And these are the main reason behind the failure, like abrasion, fatigue, corrosion, etc. These are the research papers and articles I have studied. The first research paper is the failure of terrain wire rope, in which the author studied the failure and failure method methods of wire rope and mainly focuses on the tensile failure due to the overloading effect of the wire rope. These are the articles which tells about the various reasons behind the failure of wire rope, and this is the wire rope handbook in which all standard data is given for the wire rope, like diameter of strands, material, types of lubrication, etc. In my opinion, the case study is very important because these wire ropes are like vents to various industries. They are used at ports to lift cargo, used in automobile assembly, and also used during construction. So, doing the failure analysis, we can prevent loss of human life as well as large amount of money. So, to save large amount of money, proper lubrication, inspection, and maintenance is necessary. These are the main reasons behind the failure. There are normal wear, or we can say there are abrasive wear. Then there is mechanical damage due to winding on the drum or on the sleeves, and there will be rotational damage if there is torsion given to the wire rope, and there is thermal damage and there is bending fatigue. Other than these, there is also fatigue failure and corrosion failure. In fatigue failure, we can say that hoist wire ropes are subjected to a lot of repetitive bending over the drum, which causes cracks in the individual wire. Corrosion wear occurs due to the improper lubrication, and it can be easily identified. Thank you.
Warm greeting to everyone. I am Dhaval Verma and my case study topic is the characterization of manufacturing flaws in graphite and epoxy. The objective of the case study is to develop a representative set of flaw category is composite. Also, the case study aims to elaborate the assessment of serviceability of graphite, the effect of defect on the structure, and the flaw categorization appearing in the process of manufacturing. This categorization helps in elimination of flaws and cost reduction in the process. Now we will talk about the history of selected problems. There is a long history of failure and crash in aviation industry that traced back to the manufacturing flaw of composite. One of the infamous crash is of flight 587 in which nearly 251 passengers killed. After interrogation and interviews from the crew, it was found that the main reason of the crash was the failure of a composite part. It was found further that the flying structure was trapped in the wake of turbulence and the force of air flowing against the moving rudder stressed the aircraft vertical stabilizer and eventually snapped it off. The vertical stabilizer was connected to the fuselage with six attaching points, uh, of which Two joints was made up of aluminum, two was of titanium, and the last two was made up of composite. It is due to the failure of composite part that the vertical stabilizer completely ripped off the plane. The flaw in the composite was known as delamination, in which some layers of composite material had come apart. Engineers say that in a new part, a delamination is usually a sign of the problem in manufacturing process, and this is caused by high interlaminar stress. This crash sparked debate about how to improve and standardize inspection and repair of composite material. At that time, there was a trend of visual inspection only and non-destructive testing. So flaws like them are mostly underlooked and result in the failure of parts. Now we will see how the categorization of the flaws are done. A better formulation of the character and likelihood of flaws is achieved by an industry-wide survey conducted in two rounds of questionnaire. The first questionnaire The first questionnaire is qualitative in nature and the flaws are categorized on the basis of their happening, chances, and the severity of the failure. In the second round of questionnaire, it is quantitative in nature and the probability of occurrence of a flaw is calculated and further measures are taken to prevent them in the manufacturing process. There are so many types of flaws that can be experienced in production. Some of these are external delamination, internal delamination, tear out, resin stabbed, bearing surface, fiber breakaway, edge, edge delamination, split toe, over torqued fastener. The grading is such as 0 is given for the highly improbable failure with negligible effect on the strength, and 4 is given for the most probable failure and that will also affect on the strength more crucially. The assessment is done after experimenting of 1000 sample space. Each flaw are given grade of how crucial they are. The list is exhaustive in nature and a set of individual opinions are analyzed. The second questionnaire contains more refined set of flaws as few of them get filtered out based on the grades given in the first questionnaire. The median of grades is then calculated, frequency of occurrence is noted, and each raw mean grade entry was then multiplied by its respective variation index to give a score of likelihood and criticality to each flaw. These data set can be further analyzed and the cost reduction of process of elimination can also be carried out. The analysis allow us to identify the stress field that are associated with the occurrence. These stress fields are localized in nature and sometimes dispersed and on surface. In all of the failure, it is seen that only these six type of stress field are involved. In summary, we characterized graphite epoxy manufacturing flaws by both of their likelihood of occurrence and by the stress field dis- disturbance. This characterization can then pave the way for further study on assessing the criticality of flow so as to eventually develop criteria for acceptance or rejection.
Good morning, sir. My name is Chetan Patil. My entry number is 2020 AMA 2270. My topic for the fracture mechanics project is fracture of welded joint. The main objective and motivation behind this topic is, as we know that the many of the steel structure or many of the components of any structure are made up of they required basically they required the fabrication, and in fabrication we need some kinds of joints, either welded joint or some other joints. So welded joint plays an important role in a part of structure, and hence the welded joint are most critical uh, place of the steel structure. And it is because of the high residual stresses and stress concentration factor, because they plays an important role for the crack propagation and failure of the structure. And that's why, to avoid the failure of that failure of fabrication structure, we need to study and analyze the why this failure is occurring with welded joint. So as we once we get idea and once we know how and why this failure is occurring, so that we can avoid such kinds of failure in future work. And as I told, the cracks can easily propagate, and it can be suddenly break or gradually increase. uh, So the failure will be of different kind depending on which type of crack is occurring. There are four basic types of cracks in the welded joint of steel, as given: hot cracks, cold cracks, and lamellar tearing, reheat crack. And basically, hot cracks are further divided into three types, that is solidification cracks, liquefaction cracks, and solidified liquid cracks. So as in history, we can see that here is the example of how the failure of pipe is occurring due to welded joint. So these are the images. The failure is occurring on the circumferential side of the pipe and on the flange side of the pipe, as we can see it in the next slide. So here we can see that the failure is occurring on the circumferential portion of the pipe, and here uh, as we can see, the outer diameter of the flange portion which is attached to the pipe section, the failure is occurring on that portion. So here we can see it on a bigger picture. Further, in bigger picture we can see that this failure is occurring because of the fatigue. So fatigue fracture is occurring because of either because of the lack of weld fusion or due to cyclic load of fatigue. So here is one type of example or case study, or we can say it available data. So by observing or doing the analysis of the pipe on which we can attach it with the help of the welded joint, the failure is occurring on the circumferential side, as we have seen it on the previous slide. This is mainly because of cyclic fatigue, and we can say that there are not only the single factor, there are 2 to 3 factors which are responsible for the failure of this pipe. That is because of lack of penetration, the failure is occurring on the circumferential side. Lack of fusion of the weld, that is also causing an approximately failure in 50% of the cases. And in some of the cases, the failure can occur on the flange side as well. But in most of the cases, the reason of failure of the welded joint is occurring near the circumferential portion of the pipe. So the fracture of pipes and flange weldment is occurred because of the fatigue crack propagation on the root of the weld. And there is no usual condition were noted on the pipe and flange based on the steel composition. So it is important to distinguish the what type of crack is occurring and why it is occurring, so that we can understand and avoid the failure in future. So in my opinion, welded joint plays an important role in fabrication, as we can see it in the most of the structures or various components. It is welded joint is most common way of doing the fabrication. So in order to avoid the failure of the component or whole structure, we need to take care of the failure due to welded joint. So as from this point of view, this topic is very important to study and analyze. And further, if we see, we can say that the welding failure is, if it is occurring during the fabrication, then we can treat it well. But then also it will take some amount of time and rework. But if a failure is occurring during the service, then it can cause a hazard or it can cause a harm to any person or someone. So in order to avoid the hazard and from the safety point of view, we need to analyze the why this failure is occurring, so that we can avoid such kinds of failure in futures. So this is what I have done till now, and further I will do the analysis of welded joint and why the failure is occurring. Thank you.
Good evening, sir. My name is Swapnil Amle, and now I will be presenting presentation on fracture mechanics and the crack propagation of the buried energy pipeline. So before going forward, I would like to discuss or mention some keywords which I am going to use frequently. So first one is SCC. SCC is nothing but the stress concentration cracking. Inline inspection, ILI. It is the inspection which is used to find out the fracture or the distortion in the particular pipeline segment. CGR is nothing but the crack growth rate. MCMC is Markov chain Monte Carlo. It's nothing but the simulation method which is used for the sampling and find the probability. DA is data augmentation. NHGP, non-homogeneous gamma process. NHPP is non-homogeneous Poisson's process. So these are nothing but the probability density function which I will be discussing elaborately in upcoming. Now coming to the definition of the stress concentration cracking. So stress concentration cracking is nothing but the distortion phenomena which is used which is the combination of the stress applied or the environmental impact or metallurgical condition. Okay, so there are two types of stress concentration cracking. One is intergranule cracking and second one is transgranule cracking. So the difference between intergranule cracking and transgranule cracking is intergranule cracking occurred in high pH solution, whereas transgranule cracking occurred in neutral pH solution. High pH solution means in the basic mediums generally, and neutral or acidic in neutral or acidic medium transgranule cracking occurred. So the basic difference between the most basic difference between intergranule cracking and transgranule cracking is the intergranule cracking occurred in static loading condition, and as far as the buried pipelines are concerned, we know that it is imparted to static loading only unless we go inside the pipe. So externally it is imparted statically. So our most concern with only with dealing with this inter or classical cracking, not the transgranule cracking. Whereas transgranule cracking occurred in the fatigue, that means in dynamic loading condition. The internal intergranule cracking occurred characterized by patches, shallows, and the longitudinal cracks. So this is the key features that to identify intergranule cracking. Intergranule cracking occurred in longitudinal direction compared to the radial one. Now intergranule cracking caused by CGR. CGR nothing but the crack growth rate, and the formation of anodic layer in the internal surface characterized by Faraday's law and rupture occurred. Now the current model we are using for the analysis of reliability of the buried pipelines or the fracture mechanics of the buried pipelines is nothing but the empirical approach. There is not a proper theory was available. So the method like doing number of experiment, and on the basis of the results of that particular experiments we derive empirical formula, and on the basis of that empirical formula we design pipe segment. So but this model does not account has its own drawback and does not the important things like uncertain nature, that means catastrophic nature of the cracking mechanism. It does not detect the sizing or the cracks, does not detect sizing of the crack or the growth generation and the generation of new cracks. So this is very important factor, that this model does not include the generation of new cracks. It only gives the result only basis on the present crack or the embedded cracks which are present at the time of inline inspection. These are some drawbacks. Now this is stochastic model for the measurement of error. So YRG is nothing but the measurement of error. So R represent crack, whereas J represents the inline inspection. So there are successive inspection occurred on the particular pipeline segment in the fixed interval of time. So and R is the number of crack. So if I'm talking particularly about the YRJ, so YRJ is nothing but the measurement error of the rth crack and in the jth inspection. B1J, B2J are nothing but the constant. This is the probability of detection, nothing but the limit state function, where D is the depth of the crack and dt is the critical depth we have decided. Now in further slide I will talk mostly NHPP and NHGP, non-homogeneous Poisson's process and non-homogeneous gamma process. So these are nothing but the probability density functions which is used for the sampling. So particularly NHPP is used for the crack generation, sampling of the crack generation and for find out the particular outputs between the interval 0 to t. So for example, we have to take samples in between 0 year, or that means the starting year up to the nth year, tth year. This is the probability density function of NHPP, non-homogeneous Poisson process, and this is the normalizing constant. Similarly, NHGP, non-homogeneous gamma process, is used for the sampling of the crack growth rate. So we are talking two things here. One is the crack generation rate, which is characterized by NHPP, and crack growth rate. Both are different things, and crack growth is characterized by NHGP, non-homogeneous gamma process. So this is probability distribution function. Now in further slide there are two samplings method. One is Gaussian copula. So Gaussian copula method is particularly used to establish the to find out the relation between different features which are affecting the fracture or the crack generation of the pipe. So by establishing relation or finding the relation, we can perform the dimensionality reduction, which can result in the significant reduction in computational cost. And the second one is the MCMC, Markov chain Monte Carlo. So this is nothing but the simulation method which is used for the sampling of the conditional probability. So the basic idea is to disintegrate a very low probability into the multiplication of successive occurring event conditional probability. Thank you.
Hello, sir. I am Rajat Pandey, and the topic for case study that I have selected is failure of series of Comet aircrafts during the 1950s. Historical failures and the endeavor to find out the root cause for these failures is the main reason for the birth of our subject fracture mechanics. And one such historical failure was the series of failure of Comet aircrafts during the 1950s. Studies of these failures will give us more insight into metal fatigue and crack growth under fatigue, stress concentration in the structure, we will also understand the relation between the fatigue crack growth to the applied stress amplitude, also known as the Paris law. The Comet aircraft entered the service in 1952 and became the first commercial airliner to be powered by jet engines. It was introduced as a flagship aircraft and was hailed as a triumph of British engineering. However, there were a series of accidents involving these aircrafts arising in 1954 and resulting in loss of two such aircraft in similar circumstances, which could not be so easily explained at that time. The first of these was on 8th January 1954 and involved Comet G Yoke-Peter aircraft, which approximately half an hour after the takeoff from Rome bound for London was climbing at an altitude of 27,000 feet in good weather condition when it was seen to crash into the sea near Elba in number of pieces, and another such crash occurred on 8th April 1954 when Comet GALYY took off, and similarly after approximately 30 minutes when Yoke would have been reaching the top of its climb to 35,000 feet, all contact was lost and the wreckage was later found in the sea near the Naples. The operator of Comet aircrafts withdrew all Comet aircrafts from service, and on 12th April the Ministry of Transport and Civil Aviation removed the certificate of airworthiness from the Comet. Following these accidents, the Secretary of State for Civil Aviation requested a full investigation into their causes. The investigation encompassed a number of lines of approach, but two aspects of particular interest are the reconstruction of Yoke-Peter and the accelerated simulated flight testing of another similar Comet aircraft. The reconstruction of Yoke-Peter at Farnborough continued until September 1954 as the pieces were recovered from the seabed by the Royal Navy. Eventually 70% of the aircraft was recovered, and this allowed a scenario for the last movements of the aircraft to be reconstructed. The accelerated simulated flight testing took by pressurizing the cabin using water. Water was chosen to pressurize the cabin as it is reasonably incompressible in nature, and any failure would not result in complete loss of cabin pressure instantaneously, which would have occurred if air was used. The accelerated testing showed a severe weakness in fatigue crack growth in the aircraft skin around the cutouts such as windows and escape hatches. It had undergone 3,057 flight cycles before fatigue crack grew to a failure from a rivet hole near the forward port escape hatch. The crack length before the final failure was less than 2 mm and in the accelerated test. As we can see in this figure, the crack is originating near the forward escape hatch. The cracks were observed around a number of other windows and in wings, and their growth were monitored as we can see in this image. These tests were stopped after 5,546 pressurizations when the fatigue crack grew to failure from port number 7 window and removed a 4.5 meter section of cable wall, as can be seen from the image. And it was concluded that 9,000 flight hours were sufficient to cause a crash in this model of aircraft. But one of the disastrous crashes happened after just 900 cycles. The question to be asked was, why did the failure occur after such less cycles? The answer was insufficient understanding of fatigue cracks at that time. Applying simple strength theory to metal that cracks is a big mistake, as Liberty ship experience foretold. We need to test large samples containing known cracks while never assuming that the stress is uniform and never believing in the safety factors. The conclusion from this failure analysis is that fracture mechanics can logically explain the initiation and propagation of cracks in the structures and must be used instead of simple stress criteria to prevent such tragic events in future. Now we can use fracture mechanics to analyze our situation and get an insight into the relative importance of factors which combine to produce such a catastrophic failure. If it is assumed that linear elastic fracture mechanics can be applied, then we may use Paris law. Paris law is a crack growth equation that gives the rate of growth of fatigue crack. Now, if we plot crack growth rate on y-axis and stress intensity factor on x-axis, then we get a curve that can be seen from this slide. And in the phase 2 region, that is this stable propagation of crack region, linear behavior is seen. For this linear region, we can apply Paris law, which states that dA by dN is equals to delta K raised to the power n, where A is the crack length and dA by dN is the fatigue crack growth for a load cycle capital N. The material coefficients C and M are obtained experimentally and also depend on the environment frequency, temperature and stress ratio. K is the stress intensity factor and delta K is the difference between the maximum and minimum stress intensity factors in a load cycle. In this presentation I have studied till now, and in future presentations I will try to study about the more detailed analysis of failure and the lesson learned from these failures and the design changes that need to be done and the changes in design philosophy from safe life to fail safe. Thank you.
Hello and good afternoon, sir. I'm Shreyas Samne, and I'm a final year undergrad student studying metallurgical and materials engineering at National Institute of Technology, Warangal. And I have joined IIT Delhi as a visiting student in Material Science and Engineering department. And today I'm going to present my case study topic, which is failure of high pressure turbine blades. So the content of this presentation is as follows. First, I will let you know about the objective and motivation behind choosing this topic. Second, I will let you know about the history of this problem. Third, I will describe some of the available literatures. And finally, I will let you know about my opinion and the future outlooks. So the objective behind choosing this topic is that I want to understand what is the root cause behind the turbine blade failures in jet engines. And this is important because it has been reported that nearly 50% of the jet engine failures occurs due to the damage of turbine blades. And another statistic, which is given by International Safety Statistic, revealed that there are almost 25 incidents per year which involves jet engine failure. So therefore, it is really important to study about this topic. And finally, one personal motivation behind choosing this topic is that I was very much interested about Kaveri engine project. Yet we all know this was a failure, but while reading about it, I got to know there are a lot of metallurgical aspects behind designing and manufacturing of turbine blades. And being a metallurgical engineer, I got interested in this topic, and therefore I chose this as my case study topic. This slide shows the history, and we all know it is really devastating. So this slide shows that a plane crash which happened in 1989, which involved almost 111 people killing. And here the report stated that the cause of the failure was due to the microscopic flaw in the engine, which led to fluid leakage in just 2 seconds, and that's why it led to such a disastrous outcome. Yet another incident was failure of Boeing 747, which happened in 29 July 2004. Although this doesn't involve any life property damage, but the report stated that there was a hole in the high pressure turbine blade, which was about 4 centimeter by 2 centimeter. This caused the failure of the engine. Uh, this is an image of the turbine blades from that report, where you can easily see that there are cracks at the surface of the turbine blade. So I'm interested to know about why these crack occurs in the turbine blades and what are the root cause of it. So the literatures, there are very lot of literatures. So first, and I have collected some of them and shown in this slide. So first one is the investigation of high pressure turbine blade failure in military turboprop engine, which was reported by Indian scientists from Bangalore. Yet another is which reports the investigation of fatigue failure due to the crystal orientation of nickel-based superalloys. This is another paper which shows the failure and metallurgical defect analysis of gas turbine blade. And finally, this paper shows the failure due to structural degradation of the turbine blade. So these last two papers are published in Engineering Failure Analysis, which are very much reputed journal and high impact factor journal. So I will be mostly concentrating on these articles, and in my next presentation, I will be mostly showing the conclusion of these articles, and I will be trying to understand the root cause failure behind the turbine blade failures. So my opinion is that almost there are three metallurgical factors which involved in the turbine blades. First one is corrosion, second one is fatigue, and third one is creep. So I'm very much interested to learn about them, how these affect turbine blade and cause them to failure. Second thing is that recently I came to know that there are lots of an advancement in the materials of the turbine blades. So generally people used to use nickel-based superalloys for turbine blades, but now they are shifting it to high entropy alloys. So this is because it has high strength and high corrosion resistance compared to nickel-based superalloys, and they are saying that it would overcome all the difficulties which we had in the conventional nickel-based superalloys. I'm very interested to explore on this topic also. And this brings to the end of my presentation. So thank you very much for listening.
A very good morning to all of you. I am Muhammad Mehruddin. I am here to present you the presentation on weld joint fracture. First thing, we should know why we are using welding joints. There are two types of joints. First one is temporary joint, which are generally done by nut and bolts. And the second one is permanent joint, which is done by rivet or welding. But there are some limitation of rivet joints. We have to do holes on the sheet and we have to apply pressure on both sides, etc. But in welding joint, it is given us freedom to do joint in any direction or any space without doing any hole on the sheet, and it is also very easy compared to rivet joint. We should also know about the problem in doing welding joint because it leads to fracture of the joint if you don't consider it. Under this project, we are trying to find the various causes of fracture in welding joints and give the appropriate scientific approach to reduce it at maximum extent. Now talk about the history of the welding joint. Peoples are doing welding from Bronze Age, but at that time they were using only pressure welding techniques by putting the plates overlapped and pressing them. And then after some centuries, fusion welding came into existence. And in 1890s, C.L. Coffin used a metal electrode during welding. Then in the year of 1948, gas metal arc welding was introduced and various invention takes place in the field of welding. And nowadays, very non-conventional processes are used for doing the welding, like laser beam welding, electron beam welding, and ultrasonic welding. But our study on this project is the fracture of the welding joint. Every fracture is depend on the defects. There are also some internal defects and external defects which we are going to discuss. There are some internal defects like gas inclusion, solid inclusion, or lack of fusion. During the welding, if the gas or slag is trapped in the weld bead, then it is going to reduce the strength of the weld and leads to fracture. Proper fusion also needed for the good strength of the weld bead. There are also some external defects which are surface crack, hot crack, and cold crack. Surface cracks are highly detrimental during tensile load because it's propagate. Loading conditions and surroundings are also responsible for the fracture of the weld joints. If we apply the load on the welded specimen, then there will be some principal plane where it has more probability of fracture. Surrounding atmospheric conditions are also responsible for fracture. If we design the weld joint for the ductile failure, but if the surrounding temperature is below the DTBT, which is ductile to brittle transition temperature, then the DTBT takes place and even the ductile weld bead will fracture in a brittle manner. And if there are thermal stresses or residual stresses generates in the weld bead, then the distortion is going to take place. Therefore, we have to consider all of them to study for the fracture of the weld bead or weld joint. These are some research papers which we are taking into consideration for our project. As of my knowledge, failure can take place during the welding and also take place during the service of the product. Both are linked to each other. If we take care of weld defects during welding, then we can reduce the chances of failure during service of final product. But generally in real life, we are facing fatigue type of loading. So we have to consider it because real life conditions is much differ than the laboratory conditions. In the next presentation, we will cover the mechanism of the fracture of the weld joint and going to discuss the various aspects of welding joint fracture. Thanking you.
Good evening, sir. So my topic is fatigue and fracture analysis of aircraft structure by considering the example of 1969 in-flight accident that happened in the U.S. Army. So it is about the F111, which is a very famous flight carrier of U.S. Army. So my name is Abhishek Kumar Srivastava and my entry number is 2020 AMA 2251. So proceeding with the topic, the main reason to study about this topic is that to understand the behavior of fracture analysis and to understand how the failures in the materials occurs, and it is also essential to escalate the life and the reliability of the structures that are being built, because like aircrafts we can consider are very costly, are very costly. So, and it is also important from the safety perspective of human life to ensure safe operation of flights. And even one other objective that we can say is that it minimizes the loss of it is necessary to minimize the loss of cost incurred in the production of such multi-role aircrafts. So so starting with the brief history. So actually, this is not the only first flight of F111 that has undergone the fatal destruction, but there are various flights in F100 to F110 series which have been lost. So the main reason to build F111 flights are that it had capability as a standoff missile launch platform, and it is very good for all weather conditions. And it does have some drawbacks, like it is efficient in air-to-air combats, and So F111 was conceived as a low-level flight supersonic strike aircraft, which is capable of all terrain and all weather in all visibility conditions. And the whole concept of this flight had came for a high material strength airframe with high weight and strength to volume ratio in critical structures. So if we talk about the if we talk in depth about this, then it has been during it was during the World War II that the production was accelerated, and there was urgent need of weapons and system capabilities for the U.S. Army. So even though the things were in production and design stage, still the production has been started, and the quality or the production or even the design level verification and validation testings were not done to verify to verify the designs or to anticipate any shortfalls. And later, when these problems were discovered, when accidents started happening, these problems were discovered. So the start of the failure had already started occurring well before 1969, and when this flight of United Air Force Tactical Air Command F111 was lost in December 1969, and it was during its training period, and the flight had only completed its 100 flight hours after the rollout, while the expected life is about 4,000 hours. And in this tragic accident, even the pilot was not able to eject from his seat. And preliminary investigations were determined that a fatigue crack has occurred below the lower pivot plate, and it has spread along. And the fatigue crack that had developed from a forging burst in steel forging is basically called as the Roche law. Even during the testing, like non-destructive testing, during the non-destructive testing, the sound wave has been passed, but it has passed almost parallel to the surface, and it was inefficient or impossible for them to detect. So this is how the incident had took place, and it is a brief history of how the incident occurred. And later, the various deficiencies were revealed, like although the flight was expected to be a very light flight, lighter in weight with a better maneuverability, but it was the heaviest tactical flight in operational use, and it has also the lowest engine thrust relative to the aircraft weight of that times. Aircraft weight of those times, and it had the highest ratio of aircraft weight to wing area. And also the reason for the failure that came out in the preliminary inspection were the manufacturing flaws. So basically, the original material had low fracture toughness due to the heat treatment process. Although the heat treatment is done to improve the toughness, but due to material aging and various other parameters, the materials have started aging out well before time. So coming to the root cause of the problem, so the initial philosophy was safe life philosophy, which means that a designer had to assume some existence of small yet undetectable flaws in all of the safety of flights components, and if these critical size grow over a dimension, then then it has to be rectified. But if the calculated life was unacceptable, then it is either redesigned to lower the stresses, or other solutions were opted. And here rises the problem in F111 flights. That is, the critical crack size was very small at the required aircraft limit load, and the flight was developed for. Although the flight was developed for superior strength, but it does had these sort of issues, and the increased strength led to decrease in its fracture toughness. So this made it brittle. This made it to generation of higher stresses due to the smaller critical cracks. And during the initial inspection, some solutions were suggested by some of the authorities, like bonding a high strength boron epoxy composite patch to the lower surfaces to decrease the stresses, or even the proof test was made mandatory after this. Like in the proof test, they will basically they will basically place the aircraft in liquid nitrogen at minus 40 degrees Celsius, and it was very famous it became mandatory later by the name of cold proof load test, and that too the aircraft was loaded using the mechanical jacks, so that by hanging it from the two different uh, locations at the wings. And the benefit of doing this is that firstly, if large flaws were present, they would fail the aircraft within the safety of the chamber. And second, if it did not fail, then it could be assumed that if even if there are any cracks during the design at standard operating at those operating temperatures, then it will be highlighted. So these innovations, coupled with various other stricter inspection requirements, had been started on these aircrafts too. And at that time, all the aircrafts F111 series was grounded until the next inspection. And I'm using for the time being, I'm using these two references. Fatigue crack growth from flaws in combat aircraft. This is a paper published in the International Journal of Fatigue by El Monte, and there is one more book or review by advances in by the name of Advances in Fatigue Fracture and Mechanics Analysis of Metallic Aircraft Structures. This is published by NASA. So that's all. Thank you.